All right, so here's the plan. I'm going to edit this thing, and you guys are going to listen. I just realized I can't hear myself in my headphones. It's a little distracting. So this is a interview I did this week with sound designer from India, Vijay Ratanam. He worked on the film The House Next Door. He did the trailer, sound design in REAPER. He did a lot of the sound design work for the film in REAPER. And so he was really excited to talk to me about using REAPER and all this stuff. So I think it will be a good interview. It's long, so this one, just focusing on what's going on in the trailer, is 40 minutes, and I have another one that's over an hour. Everyone can hear me, right? Say hi if you're watching. Okay, good. Thanks, guys. Do you want me to explain the template first that I use for, hopefully not too loud, guys. Hopefully you can hear me loud, but not too loud. So do you want me to explain the template that I use for editing videos? I use the same template like every time I do a tutorial. That may as well just start there. So I've got a folder track for video, and this has my different layers, and it goes from the lowest track as like the background. That's my main track, usually screen capture. And then I have stuff at the beginning for my template, intro and outro, the sequence here. I've got a thing for lower thirds, which is actually some GIFs. I'll advance through. And then above that is titles. Titles being like, you know, any text that I add on the screen. And then GIF again, where it shrinks. And then a branding thing, which is just a Reaper blog text thing that goes over top of everything. So it looks like that. I keep everything that I don't use immediately in the editing at the end of the project. And then I have a folder for audio, which I use just a brick wall limiter on that one. Got a track for my voice. I gotta update my template because this doesn't even have an EQ in it. Come on. And I always do something like that on it. And isotope, dialogue denoiser, expander, a de-esser, and an LA2A style compressor. This next track is just for my guest, VJ. And then I've got the capture audio, so whatever was recorded with the screen capture goes there. I'll probably use stems from the film to go in there. And then I've got my intro and outro sound. And that's usually just this video clip, or this audio clip that's linked to the video clip. Not everyone likes that intro music. I'm on the fence about it. People complain about it, but some people like it as well. So I don't know. And at the end, I just drag this clip in. It's got a long... So this stuff always stays the same, and I just drag that into place at the end of the video. And then I have a couple other things, odds and ends. That's the intro clip. Again, the old subscribe thing. I've got my lower thirds things in a couple different sizes. So that's the template. I drop my footage in. Where'd I put it? Here. Towards the end. And then I use a, excuse me, I use a particular workflow for figuring out what I'm going to keep in it. So instead of just putting it in at the beginning and then cutting out in like ripple mode, I'll go through and like listen once and just put regions around what I like. And then I'll use a script that takes all the content that is within a region and moves it to the beginning of the session, pastes it end to end. So I'm just looking at what I want to keep rather than focusing on the mistakes and removing the mistakes. Kind of the same result, but different mindset. Skinny Mank says, this DAW is consuming every spare moment. It's so vast that you can, what you can do with it. Keep tutorials coming. Yes. Okay. I will. I intend to keep doing this for a long time. So when we did this interview, I don't think I recorded intros and outros properly. But yeah, I think I've got it. I think I can make it work. we kind of rushed the beginning and ends of this, but there's a lot of content. There's like 40 minutes of this one unedited.
Came out is the Tamil language version, but the Hindi version is releasing tomorrow, and that's getting the worldwide release.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure there's a big Indian community in.
Okay, so I need to do some cleanup on this dialogue because it's recorded through his phone over Skype, so it's got like, you know, terrible noise. Use the dialogue denoiser. Okay. Which cleans up a lot of
But the
stuff.
Hindi version is releasing tomorrow, and that's getting the worldwide release.
Okay. And I think I'll also need the declipper. Who uses RX?
Overseas master, and we did a censor. I mean, each countries have a different censorship laws.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember sending one for US and one for Canada, a master for.
Is there a version that is? Yeah, so there's a lot of clipping and stuff on this. I might actually just print this. I'm gonna move the effects chain to the item, and I'll just commit that by gluing the item. Chat says, is there a place to find more people to collaborate on the NinjaM platform? Honestly, I don't really know. I've seen people talking about it on the Reaper forum, and that's about it. I've never used it. This is going to take a while, so I'll put music on again. Is there a script I'm using for the region selection part? A repack. It's the region selection. I have a video on it, and I think the workflow is in the Reaper blog download pack if you're a newsletter subscriber. It's a combination of a script and a cycle action and some custom actions. It's fairly complex, but yeah, it worked well. So committing these effects to this clip is hopefully going to save time in the end. It's kind of boring waiting for it right now. But these plugins are going to, yeah, they're going to really clean up the audio. And by committing them, it's not going to slow down the project. Not something I do too often, but with this like over the phone sort of recording stuff, you kind of have to, especially for a really long file like this. It's 40 minutes. While we're waiting, I'm going to check my messages on Twitter. Yeah, you could use that workflow entirely with the keyboard. So as long as you can put down your time selection at the edit cursor, I use the down arrow for that. So I'm playing, and I'll press up or down to move my cursor, and then as it's playing, and I find an out point for a part that I want to keep, I'll tap that again. It'll set my time selection, and then I'll press R to make a region. If I'm not sure about a particular edit, I'll do things like selecting the area between regions and then previewing that section by skipping the time selection. I'll play from within one region. It'll skip the time selection that's between the two regions, and it'll jump ahead, and that helps me a lot. Sometimes I'll be editing words out in a sentence, and I want to hear it in context without actually doing the edit. So yeah, that really helps me. Sorry, this is boring. I didn't expect to have to glue a file only like 10 minutes into the live stream. I seem almost sad in some of my videos. Well, just tired. I try not to seem sad. It's just, yeah, I'm just tired all the time, or my back hurts and things like that. .30 people watching. That's cool. Probably going to be sending out a newsletter later today. I'm a bit late sending that out. And there's a bit of news about the website. Hopefully you guys have been following the website and not just on YouTube. First news is that the site is now more secure. Set up HTTPS with an SSL certificate, so there's no worries about entering any information into the forums here. It's more secure. There was never a problem before. Never had any breach of information or anything like that, but it's something that was simple to set up and just helps everyone. The other thing you might not have seen is this article. It's an interview with Wilbert Roge II, and he composed the score for Call of Duty World War II inside Reaper. It was a 4-hour-long session file with, like, I don't know, he said 364 tracks. That's kind of insane. And he said it didn't crash or anything. So I've got some Q&A that I took from one of the Facebook groups. And then I asked a few of my own questions, and he went into great detail about what's going on in the session. We've got a MIDI mockup, which I think sounds awesome to begin with. So he composed everything in Reaper, and then he sent it off to get orchestrated, and they recorded a real orchestra, and they probably mixed it in Pro Tools and stuff like that. Jack Manhorn, yeah. I've been wanting to stream for a while. I upgraded my internet, and then it was like worse for a month, and it turned out to be just a hardware filter on the cable box outside. So like, the guy came, and it was like 2 seconds for him to fix it, and now I've tripled my upload and download speed. So yeah, I'm gonna try to stream more often. I still get super nervous about doing them. Because I think like no one's gonna watch, or it's just gonna, like, nothing's gonna work. Seems to be working great. I'm able to output at a higher bit rate than I was by like double, and no dropped frames as far as I can tell. So yeah, so back to this. This is something that didn't end up on YouTube, so if you're only following the YouTube channel, you'll miss out. There's also the Facebook group, Reaper Blog Community, and up to almost 800 members. I've had to ban 2 people that spammed, and that's it. Like, no fighting. It's been like the best Facebook group I've ever been in. It's been great. There's the Facebook page as well. And what else? Twitter, Patreon. You guys all know this stuff, but just a reminder while we're waiting for this glue to finish. And it has. Okay. So back to the edit. I have to remember to enable this for take automation, take volume automation. And I'm going to select these 3 items and group them. So I need to find where this project actually starts. We were looking for something at the beginning of it.
Well, maybe.
I'm recording already. So, hey guys, welcome to another Reaper. All right, so here's the start. I'm going to trim that, and I'm going to start making a time selection for what I want to keep. Hey guys, welcome to another Reaper blog video. Today I'm talking with Vijay Ratanam, and he has designed the trailer for. All right, so I'm going to keep this section. And I guess something else of note when I'm doing this, I'm in a frame grid. So you click on your snap and grid settings, you set it to frames, and then all your edits are on the frame grid, and the video plays nicely. So I'm gonna press R to make a region here. Your shortcut's probably different. He has designed the trailer for The House Next Door. I gotta stop saying all the time. The House Next Door. It's releasing very soon. He will tell us a bit about the film. It's a horror film, and he did the trailer in Reaper, and he did all the sound effects in Reaper. The actual film was mixed in Pro Tools, but using everything that he edited and created in Reaper. So we have a couple videos, this one and another one explaining all of his templates and workflow for working with Pro Tools, going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. Vijay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me in the show. As I said, I'm a big fan of Reaper blog. I've been, I'm a big fan of. All
right, so finding my in point, making a time selection, and then I'll just modify that time selection when I find an out point. My stream mic volume is way lower. It could be the just being off axis a little bit. It's OBS setting. I can turn everything else down, or I can here. Noise. OBS is pretty awesome because you can run Isotope plugins in it now. It's awesome. Two different audio feeds coming through. Which is which? The one where I'm talking is me, and the other one where Reaper is playing back is the pre-recorded. I just look for the green button up at the top, and you'll be able to know. So I don't know if it's my noise gate jack or just the amount of gain. I can bump this up, but come on. Okay, I'll bump that up, and this one needs to be down, I think.
Fan of Reaper blog. I've been following your blog for
Audio okay
a while now. Ever since I started using it, I learned to use Reaper by watching your videos, and so it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Let's could you tell us a bit about The House Next Door?
Yeah, The House Next Door is a horror film produced by Viacom 18 Motion Pictures India and Itaki Entertainment. And there are the sound team. We actually have there's four of us. There's myself and Mr. Vishnu Govind and Sri Shankar. We three of us designed the film, and then it was mixed by Vishnu, who is also a sound designer on the project, and he's one of the mixer, and Rahmadullah, he's the other mixer. So there's two mixers and three sound designers in this project. And then we have, of course, we have a Foley crew and all that. So that's the crew information. The film, this is basically a horror film. First, the film, this is basically a horror film, first of its kind. A horror film, first of its kind. In India, it's an out and out horror film. The film, the story actually happens in the northern. The story actually happens in the northern part of India, where a family moves in to a house, as the title suggests, house next door. But typically the horror happens in if you watch a lot of horror movies.
So, this section of the interview, I think he gave a lot of spoilers to this film. So, it's quite a long explanation of how we got up to. We got, I don't know how many minutes this is. This is 5 minutes of just explaining the plot of the film. So, I'm gonna have to trim this no matter what.
If you watch a lot of horror movies, the story, the plot is pretty much the same in all the horror movies. There's always someone moving into a house, where you have ghosts in the house or some paranormal activity happening there, and then the plot is pretty similar to almost all horror movies, but it's about how you handle that plot and make it interesting. And I think director Milind Rao of the film has made it really interesting. The film has some great music composed by Girish Gopalakrishnan, and he has done a very good job in collaborating with the sound designers. And we've done a lot of back and forth working. He would give us his temp tracks. He would. I mean, we didn't use any temp tracks. When I say temp tracks, I don't mean royalty-free music in this film. I mean, uh, like when the scene was conceived by director Milind Rao, this was actually written by the director and the producer.
Okay, so some of this stuff has to be adjusted.
Director Milind Rao of the film has made it really interesting. The film has some great music composed by Girish Gopalakrishnan, and he has done a very good job in collaborating with the sound designers. And we've done a lot of uh, like when it was conceived by director Milind Rao. This was actually written by the
Okay, this comes over here, I think.
royalty-free music in this film. I mean, uh, like when the scene was conceived by director Milind, royalty-free music in this film. I mean, uh, like when it was conceived. So this film was conceived by Siddharth and Milind. They wrote this, and it's based on a true story. So when, for example, when we talk about sound and music, when they conceived a certain scene, um, they sort of bring in the music composer. They sort of bring in the music composer early on, and they compose a theme for it. And after they shoot, they use that theme and edit the scene. And then when I get the picture lock, well, not exactly a picture lock because we've kept on changing the edits for more than I don't know 12, 13 times we have changed the edits during the production. So when I got a picture version, I would have composed music for that scene. So I would have to design my sound around that, or sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes I would have to design the same. We would have to design the sound design team. We would design the scene, and we would then or sometimes it's the other way around. The sound design team we would design the sound design the scene, and we.
All right, so here's a good spot for that skip time selection thing I mentioned earlier. So I've got the shortcut Shift Command Spacebar, but the actual action is play skip time selection. I have a video on this, by the way, but here's an example of how I would do it in an edit. So I've got a region for something I want to keep, a time selection of something I don't want to keep, and then another region of what I want to keep. So I hit keyboard shortcut.
We would design the scene, and we would then put a temp next to the composer,
So
and
it
he would
jumps.
construct music.
So it jumps from the end of this region to the start of the next region, or the end, beginning and ends of the time selection. And it's much easier to get a clean edit for something like this. Even though I'm snapped to grid, to the frame grid.
Design the scene, and we would then put a temp.
It's better than it was by far.
Put a temp next to the composer, and
Daniel,
he would
hi.
construct
Chris,
music
hi.
around that. So it's a collaborative process throughout the sound editorial, of this film. And the film story, basically, a family moves into a house which is a neighboring house of the
Just made a mistake.
a house which is a neighboring house of the lead actor. So a family moves in there, and the girl in the family gets possessed, or that's how it seems at the beginning. And then the girl in the family gets possessed, or that's how
I kind of hate how the time selection stuff works if you're using keyboard shortcuts. Often it goes like back to the beginning of the project, or it always seems to do the opposite. So my cursor is parked, I'm pressing down, press play.
Gets possessed, or that's how it seems at the beginning. And then,
press up and it ends my time selection. But I need to trim that.
It all starts like that, and then the story moves on towards the flashback of why these people are haunted in that house, what's really happening. And, there's a backstory to it where you have a...
Okay, and this is spoilers probably for the film, and I'll probably
what's really happening.
I'll leave it there, jump ahead a couple minutes
After
maybe.
seeing her own daughter. If he kills a girl child, he ends up killing his own daughter. This parts of it is true of the that's how the film pans out, and it's about how it all ends. This part.
All right. So I'm avoiding spoilers and making this edit a little bit shorter. Chris asks, are you editing the audio only, not the video? I am making my edit based on the audio. So kind of like a podcast or interview only. After this first section, we actually look at his sound design project for the trailer. So yeah, so I'm gonna, it's kind of a long intro before we get into examples or seeing the trailer or anything like that. So I'm just gonna skip ahead.
Parts of it is true of the story, and the rest is dramatized. Of course, they're all highly dramatized. So that's something about the film.
What is that? You can edit the video automatically from the edited audio simply by copying audio track and replace the source media. Well, the tracks are grouped, or the items are grouped. So any changes, if I make a split here, all three of these items are split. So I can move stuff around and they all stay together. Make sense? But right now I'm just choosing the parts that I want to keep. And yeah, and the actual edit comes a bit later. I'm just doing the selection process. Okay, let's watch the trailer.
Okay.
All right, so keep that, and then it'll be the actual trailer, and then the trailer plays. Okay, so can you take us through your session and the kinds of sounds that you added to the trailer?
Okay, So as I was saying, this trailer, I have the FX tracks in Reaper. It was mixed partly in Reaper and partly in Pro Tools. When I say partly, what I mean is the music and dialogue were playing in Pro Tools, and the sound effects was edited in Reaper and delivered to the mix stage in Reaper. And we ran Pro Tools and Reaper as Rewire, host and slave. Pro Tools being the host and Reaper being the Rewire slave. So basically,
The ripple editing section comes after. After I choose what I want to keep, I'll ripple, and I'm only cutting out maybe a few frames at a time just to fix the timing. But for something like this, there's not going to be a ton of that. I think it's going to be a fairly loose edit. Already have the handicap of recording over Skype. So, yeah, and it's long. I'm not going to obsess about it. The interviews don't get a ton of views, so yeah.
And Reaper being the Rewire slave. So basically, Reaper is feeding in Pro Tools a 5.1 FX stem.
By the way, it's already 3 hours into editing, just to get to this point. So I've had to. Well, we did the interview, then I had to organize like the two cameras and the sound, and then render that as a video, and that took 2 hours. And now I'm doing the rough cut. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and I've got a second video that's even longer. It's going to be the same process for making it.
A 5.1 FX stem, which has the hits and impacts and all kinds of effects that you heard in the trailer. So what I have for this demonstration is I have a stem printed. What I have for this demonstration is I have a stem printed. I mean, if you see my Reapers project, you will see these two tracks, which are routed to a folder, and it says stems from Pro Tools. So this is basically a dialogue stem that came from Pro Tools, which was during the mix. All these multi tracks were playing from Pro Tools, and this is the mix of the music stem. Of course, in Pro Tools, all these tracks were playing as individual tracks instead of one stem. So for this demo purposes, I bounced out a 5.1 from Pro Tools music and a 5.1 dialogue, there. And then take us through the trailer. Where do I start? I mean, the trailer starts with Pro Tools music and a 5.1 dialogue. Take us through the trailer. I mean, the trailer starts with the metronome going on, with the metronome going on. The metronome actually, there's an interesting scene in the film where there is a psychiatrist who is trying to analyze the girl because the girl behaves possessed, and at first nobody in the house believes that she's possessed, so everybody thinks that she's got some kind of a mental issue. She's going through some trauma or something like that. So they bring in a psychiatrist, and they try to hypnotize the girl to find out what's going on. So this is basically from the film. So this particular sample I've used for the metronome is the same sample I used in the film, in the actual film. Okay. But if you notice this, the trailer, I've used very little samples directly from the film. We actually finished the film before we did the trailer, so there's very little sounds that I've used from the film. This is one, and then there's the door knocking that you will hear in the trailer when the girl is in the bathroom you will hear the door being knocked, like fisted, pounded. It's really heavy door knocking there. Those samples are used from the trailer, from the film. Uh, and then there's a bit where a telephone is being thrown from a room when the girl is walking on the corridor. That particular sound was taken from the film. And then if you see, there's an exorcism scene at the end of the trailer, where you have some voices of the girl, being in the exorcism, and that those sounds are taken from the original film. Apart from that, most of the sound, and yeah, and of course, there's a big scream. The girl, the and yeah, and of course, there's a big scream. The girl, the chair is flying. The classic chair is flying exorcism bit, where the girl screams, and that particular scream is also used from the film. Apart from that, all the other bits, I cut. I created them from the scratch for the trailer.
Monkey Brains says, talk to other sound editors that were using different DAWs slaved from the laptops to PT at a final mix, but they can't have been using Rewire as all on different laptops. It could have just been a timecode sync plus sending multiple audio outputs. Here he's talking about doing it all on one system. So he just runs Rewire, Reaper as a Rewire plugin. The other video actually has a demo of that, sort of. He talks about how it's set up anyways. I feel like we should watch. Okay, so yeah, so that's the trailer. That's what we're talking about in this. So way to cut up and label the items as you are recording them to help with editing later. Yeah, you can do item notes. You can even attach pictures to things. Not something I ever do, but you go to item properties and no, I forget. If you want to rename something, you can do it here. What is it called? Right here. This is the take name. So you want to just rename the item. Someone remind me where item notes are. I forget. You can bring up a note for something. You can even drag in an image. Have anything? I think you can just drag that in. No? Oh, I don't know. I never use this. So what do you think of the trailer? Pretty cool, I think. Looks really creepy. And you were telling me the other day when we were chatting, the reason you can't take, just start off with your sound effects stem from the actual film. you can't take just using the same cuts that they used for the video edit, is because there's not enough time to build up any of the effects.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, in a horror film, the way we give the scare is we kind of set up the scare. So let's say we have a scare as per the script. Let's say we need to scare people off at third minute. If that is the case, I would have to start building up to that moment well before, much ahead, maybe 2 minutes prior to that, or 2.5 minutes prior to that. I may build up to that by maybe adding some moody drones, or um, some really eerie sounds, and start building up to that crescendo. And it is at that moment that you throw something on the face, or it could be the other way around. I can start taking things down and make everything much quieter and create that dynamic range that is required to scare you. So when things start, this is a trick that's been used in a lot of horror films. I mean, some of my, and create that dynamic range that is required to scare you. This is a trick that's been used in a lot of horror films. I mean, some of my favorite horror films are like the old William Friedkin's Exorcist, and movies like Omen, and all these movies have used this trick. And this is an age-old trick which sound mixers and sound designers have used for a long time, and it proves that it works every time. I
Yeah.
mean, typically in a horror movie, you will see they either add some elements to it, or they take things down and they make everything quieter. And the moment it's human nature, when somebody is talking to you, and when somebody is talking to you in a very subtle voice, you naturally start paying more attention to it. So it kind of sucks you in.
Yeah.
So it's the same idea here. I mean, if we have a busy party, and then if we are supposed to scare someone in a busy party, at some point in the scene we would start turning everything down, and then creating that dynamic range. The moment everything starts going down, you naturally start paying more attention, and you know getting yourself into it. And then when you're really in, we throw something at you in your face, and that kind of scares you. But in a trailer, I mean, this trailer is basically 2 minutes and 7 seconds long. So um, when I got this trailer, I thought, the first thing that I thought is, okay, I can use all these stuff that we made for this film, and we can use this in the trailer. But uh, I found, and we found, I should say, we found we can use this in the trailer. Say we the trailer is only two. We found that the trailer is only 2 minutes and 7 seconds long, and we couldn't create that kind of we didn't have that room to create that build up. So we decided to use only selected sounds from the film and then reconstruct the whole thing. And also the music in the trailer is also dynamic. So we wanted to. This trailer was cut for this music in the trailer is also dynamic. Trailer was This trailer was cut for this music. So basically, the director came up with the idea of this. This is how the trailer is going to be, and the music was composed for that. And then the picture was edited for the music. And then when I got it, I got the music, and the music had so much space in it, so I can still do some hits and whooshes and all these kind of stuff. And the music had room to allow all these things. So as a team, we decided to use new elements for trailer instead of just copying what we have from the film.
Alejandro, it's my trick, not yours. I've used it for like 200 videos. So yeah, it's my trick now. You're telling me that this trailer mix didn't really take you that long at all. Like you said, four
Yeah,
4 hours.
yeah, yeah. We edited this trailer in 4 hours because we knew what we had to do in this trailer, because at this time we'd already um, finished the film. So we were very clear on, the director has been very clear from the very start on what he wanted. Both the director and producer had very clear vision on, this is how we want the film to be. And the composer is also, taking us in the right direction through his music. So, we knew what we had to do. So we knew what we had to do. So it wasn't like oh, I don't know what I have to do here. It always takes time when you don't know the direction that you have to. It always takes time when you don't know.
So Skype cut out there. It's really unfortunate. It's hard to hear what he's saying.
I don't know what I have to do here. It always takes time when you don't know the direction that you have to, sort of move in. But in this trailer, we knew what we had to do, what was expected of us. So we followed that, and it helped to finish it fast.
So even though you had to basically start from scratch on all the sound effects, or finding new sound effects to fill the trailer, you're still able to do it really quickly. Do you think that is your experience with your tools, or is your experience with your tools, or is that something that Reaper helped you with?
Well, Reaper definitely helped me. I mean, ever since my start with Reaper, I actually started using Reaper when I started this film, which is about 6 to 8 months ago. So I haven't been using Reaper for a long time. But when I started this film, I wanted to have another platform where I could do all these kind of processing. And I found Reaper through David Farmer's videos, and I really saw what he did on those tutorials, and I was like, wow, this is something that I should learn. And I started learning this, and
Shout out to David Farmer, his great videos.
I did some bits and pieces for the film in Reaper, not just bits and bits. I did a fair bit in Reaper, and then I bounced them out as stems. Fair bit in Reaper, them out as stems and took it to Pro Tools. Like for example, that exorcism scene. We did a lot of voice processing in Reaper with repitch. Repitch was really good because we created some kind of off-key harmonies with her voice. Basically, we took her voice. Let me show you. I think one example is that for example, this voice. Um, you know, in you have. I would pitch shift this to maybe 5 semitones. Sorry, 5 semitones. 5 semitones, and then add a pitch shift this to maybe 5 semitones, and then add another shifter and shift this, and then add another shifter and maybe have that 1 octave lower. So this kind of creates like a really disturbing harmony on her voice. This was helpful, for some of it, and then for some of it, I used some voices like a black cat, maybe sometimes a donkey, sometimes a walrus, sometimes an elephant. There's some of my voice in there for the lady because sometimes she goes really. There's a part there's the exorcism scene where she starts making these weird sounds and weird faces. So when there are moments where you hear a man's voice through her, but you won't be able to notice it is man's voice, but it is kind of pitched up so that it still has that feminism, but it is not exactly feminine. And there's my partner Vishnu's voice as well in there, and then there's like donkey, all these kind of animals, beasts blended in and pitch shifted. For all these kind of pitch shifting, I found Reaper really easy. All I just had to do is just hold Option, and just pull it out like this, and just turn the preserve pitch off, and that's it. It will pitch shift, and the pitch shift, I found the pitch shifting algorithm in this is really powerful. And also stretch markers. I was using a lot of stretch markers for for manipulating the pitch here and there. So I found them very useful. And the other reason is also the fact that my library is, I'm more of a metadata freak. If you look at my library, I have all these things organized, cataloged, in my sound miner. I haven't got my sound miner opened. In my sound miner, you would see all these libraries are. I have all these things organized, cataloged, in my sound miner. In my sound miner, you would see all these libraries are, very well, nicely cataloged. So I can just search and audition the stuff that I want and find what I want with ease. So sound miner is a essential part of my workflow in finding what I need. So all the metadata is, most of them is it comes from the manufacturers themselves, like Sound Ideas or Pro Sound Effects Master or the Hollywood Edge stuff. All of these are very nicely, they come with great metadata, so it's easier for you to search and find the ones that you need faster.
Feel free to interrupt me, guys, if you have any questions about anything, really. This is, not sure how far we are in. A little over half of this interview of Rough Cut.
I would split this trailer in a few ways. Number one, this trailer consists of a lot of whooshes. So of course, whooshes was one of the hard whoosh, soft whoosh, slow whooshes, fast whooshes. But of course, I can make them faster or soft or slower in Reaper as well by pitch shifting them. Some of the whooshes that I've used are, from fire, from water, or some wind. I could make a Doppler from a wind or a sea wave, and filter them out so that it doesn't feel like water anymore. And the clip effects, the take effects thing is really cool for these kind of things. Like for example, for this kind of, maybe I would use EQs like Fab Filter, or Fab Filter is definitely one of my favorite, and it's Freeform from Melda. Have you heard of that?
Hey, Vijay. Yeah, we're doing the edit right now.
It's Freeform from Melda.
Eric, what's happening with the regions is these regions are all the bits of the interview that I'm keeping as the start of my edit. So this is just the, we're just picking like the best takes sort of thing, and kind of we're just skipping over the edits or the bad bits. So instead of ripple editing from start to finish, I'm just taking what I like, and we're going to move that all to the beginning of the session over here, and that's a good that's been a really good starting point for me. I do all my videos this way. Okay, you sent me an important email. Should I check now? I'll check on my phone. Okay. Yeah, I'll use the trailer from YouTube. No problem.
Freeform from Melda. Fab filter is definitely one of my favorite, and it's Freeform from Melda. Have you heard of that? Oh, it's really powerful. Have you heard of that?
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, it's really powerful.
Not sure if I cut out something here that I wanted to keep. I did ask a question here. What were some of the keywords that you found useful for designing a horde trailer? It's that one. Okay. Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, it's really powerful. It gives you 60 dB of gain reduction, so you can pretty much draw on it like that, and it can make some really. I mean, you take a wind and make crickets out of it. It's so powerful, and you can basically draw your curve like that, and you can make a cricket out of a wind, or and then if you put a tremolo on top of that, it would make it even more crickety, and maybe add some little bit of reverb into it.
Yeah.
So this is one of the really powerful EQs that I used for this film, and then Fab filter, that's also really powerful. The Pro Q2, these two were my go-to EQs on this. This also can do 100 dB, well, 30 dB, yeah. This also can do 30 dB, yeah. 30 dB of gain reduction. So this is also powerful. So I would take some, I don't know, maybe wind or something, and then filter it out so that it's more like a instead of a high wind.
Yeah.
And then maybe boost the low end extensively, pitch shift them, and maybe throw in a Doppler from waves or something. And sometimes when the Doppler didn't work, I would use a
Eric, I have a video on that process where you're kind of seeing it now.
maybe throw in
Getting
a Doppler
close
from
to the
waves.
end of the interview, so there's just one button that does a pretty complex chain of actions that puts it all at the beginning without any gaps.
Maybe throw in a Doppler from waves or something, and sometimes when the Doppler didn't work, I would use the stretch marker and stuff like that. Maybe a sweep. So all these kind of things. It depends on what I'm doing with what is my source element and how I want it to sound like in the trailer.
When I was exploring the session you sent me, I noticed you were using some automation items on volume for like a really interesting fluttering effect. I think it was actually that effect, that track right there, one of the red ones.
Yeah, one of the 5.1 ones. That's, let me see. Oops. Yeah, here. This is basically, yeah, one of the 5.1 ones. Yeah, here. this is basically a scream of the girl at the end of that hypnotize at the end of that thing. So I have basically like a rising tone, kind of like a it's basically a reversed whoosh, uh, which I rendered in a 5.1. And then I found the automation items very useful because, like, for example, I can just uh, draw an automation like this and show you what I mean. Have the LFO set to parametric, and then or triangle. Actually, in that case, I was using triangles, and then cycles. If I increase a cycle, it basically creates a stutter. And if I want the stutter to start slower at the beginning, and then or slower beginning and then go faster towards the end, I can use the frequency skew. That made it. And if I use it the other way around, it starts off faster and it goes slower. And um, and if I want the, if I change the baseline, it started doing this, and that gave me control over um, the volume of the stutter, and the amplitude also. It gave me control over the or the amount of stuttering, rather.
Yeah.
So I found this really easy way of creating stutters, rather.
Yeah.
Easy way of creating stutters. And the best part about the automation items is that you could save this as a preset, and then I could just, let me show you. I could make a automation item, and if I want stutter on this, I would just load. I have some preset stutters automation that
I just realized that I put the webcams into here, but it's covering up the that one section. So I'm gonna have to go into the original file and render at that section without the webcams there.
I've preserved, like progressive stutter. So this is basically looping for the length. So no, that's it. That's a stutter. That's a progressive stutter. Now,
Yeah.
if I want to, the looping part of that is also interesting. Progressive stutter.
So that's gotta figure out how far into that. 29 minutes. Let's write it down. Yeah, the connection sounds as good as it was before. Let me check. See if the kids are stealing bandwidth. Be right back. Well, I don't know. Oh wow. Yeah, it's really bad now. All right, is it working any better now? Turned it off and turned it on again. I don't know. Doing that, I keep forgetting. This will go to unlisted. Typing it just in case you can't hear me anymore. Getting pretty close to the end of this, and yeah, and I'm gonna have to wrap it up soon, anyways. Let's just get through it.
I want to, the looping part of that is also interesting. So I found the automation, and the automation item feature came out like 3 or 4 days just before I started editing this trailer. So I was like, wow, that's a cool feature that I could use for this trailer. So I found that very useful. So I've made some kind of stutter effects, maybe 2 or 3 places in this trailer.
Yeah. I'll play an example now.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any other interesting parts of this? So there are a lot of muted items, I think. On your
Some of them might.
Maybe we can go through some examples of what's happening in the LFE group.
Yeah, the LFE group is something that the LFE group is something that I always like to cut the LFE as a separate group. It's a habit that I picked up from working in Pro Tools, because in Pro Tools, the LFE fader in Pro Tools is a post fader send. So during the mix, if I want to increase the volume of a certain track, and if that track is routed to, if I have some send to the LFE, what happens is, if I increase the volume of this, naturally the volume on the subwoofer, the LFE channel, also goes up. And I didn't like that, and I wanted to have a separate control for LFE. And sometimes, earlier on I used to do a separate send. Earlier on I a separate send for it instead of using separate tracks. That was okay. It gave me some control, but then I wanted to cut separate elements for the LFE, maybe more filtered to give a better size. In the trailer, to give a better size. In the trailer, you may have seen me use some pink noise, or even sine tones, or square waves, sort of 40, 50, 60 hertz, 80 hertz kind of, uh, square waves, filtered pink noise, and stuff like that for impacts, and even distorted tones for the impacts. So I started cutting LFE tracks as a separate group, and that's the habit that you see in Reaper as well. So I have a separate track where I cut these kind of low frequency effects, and I basically bus them to a folder, and in the folder I have a simple one band filter, low pass at 150 hertz at 24 dB per octave slope.
Excellent.
And I have these, maybe you might see some stretch markers here as well here in one of these tracks. It's basically a heartbeat when she sits on the toilet. You hear the door being banged regularly, like quite often, and then she's scared and she goes back and she sits in her toilet seat, and you find she's actually sitting on the ghost. So I have like kind of a heartbeat, starting slow, and then it goes higher and higher in tempo. So for those kind of effects, I used the stretch marker.
What do you think? Is that a good place to? Yeah, we're at 37 minutes, so trimmed, but there's also the. I don't think we don't really
Yeah.
need to go into. So I think that's a good place to end. Thank you so much for
Okay.
sharing this session with us. It's really cool to see. Well, just to see inside anyone's session is there's always so much to learn, and to see what's happening in such a high profile film is to see what's happening in such a high profile film is really awesome. Just being able to see Reaper being used, in games and films and all over is amazing because it feels like such an underdog sort of DAW, right? But
Well,
it's so powerful.
yeah, I mean, you would think that, you would think people who are not familiar with this platform may think that, wow, what can this do? But yeah, when I started using it, I was like, wow, this is something that I really need to get my hands on. And then I started learning it. It was a different learning curve for me, because when coming from the Pro Tools environment, I mean, that's why David Farmer's videos really helped me, and your videos as well. I mean, in fact, I would say more on David Farmer's video, because David Farmer's video directly related to my kind of scenario where, you've been a Pro Tools user for years. I've also used other DAWs like Nuendo and all that at the earlier part of my career. But coming from Pro Tools, you've been using Pro Tools for many years, and you've always had to go around and do this kind of pitch shifting things with many plugins and all that. So the moment I saw Reaper, was like, wow, this is something else. I mean, the ability to have third-party plugins on items, automation per take, all these kind of things like were fascinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Um, we should probably talk about. Should we? Fil- this If you're looking for a horror film. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There'll be links to everything relevant in the description of this video. I'll try to put as much of this information into text form as well. So thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon. Visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials. Okay, so the rough cut is done. Do we still have people watching? That's a good question. 11 people watching? Okay, here's where the magic happens. Oh shit. There's something I need to do first. So at 29 minutes, I think it was, I need to go into my trailer thing. The original recording and export a clip that doesn't have open. Export a clip that doesn't have the thing. Why is this not opening? Doesn't have the, I can't even think right now. Doesn't have the webcams in front of it. Oh, that was the wrong one. Okay, 29 minutes, I think it was.
That's, let me see. Oops. Yeah, here. This is basically a
one, him, and me. Okay.
Yeah, here. This is basically a scream of the girl at the end of that hypnotize. At the end of that, have the LFO set to parametric, and then or triangle. Actually, in that case, I was using triangle, and then cycles. If I increase the cycle, it basically creates a stutter. And if I want the stutter to start slow, starts rather. And the best part, some preset stutters automation that I've. So I want to, the looping part of that is also interesting. So,
Yeah, I'll play an example now. Export selected range. Yeah, this section, this is the source material. So it's just that one part where I had the webcams covering the action. So I need to replace that in my source clip here before I can make any changes. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to find. Which unfortunately will take at least 5 minutes to render. So let's wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for watching the live stream today. It has been fun, and it got me to finish my work, or at least get a good chunk of it done. And that's always good, because otherwise I would just be playing video games right now. So so the usual thing. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Join the Facebook community, Reaper Blog community. Support the Reaper Blog through Patreon. And visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.